right.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Moments. I am so glad that you came to join us today. Today I have a professor, published scholar, author, producer, director, coach, journalist, and interviewer, and the list goes on and on. I don't have all the time to talk about all the slashes. Dr. Diane Howard, we're so glad to have you in Morning Moments.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here, Andy. Thank you.
Dr. Howard, tell us a little bit about what's going on. About your what do you do and what do you do it? Yeah, I know that there's so many things that God has just blessed you with through the years in so many ways. But what's on your heart right now about what God's done for you?
Well, I am amazed, Andy. You're absolutely right. The journey that I'm on right now began many, many years ago and has continued just one step at a time. So I'm still involved in some amazing developments that I didn't expect to be involved in at this stage of my life. I'm now 74, but I'm still very, very active in the, especially the film industry, and have been involved in what I call performance studies. I now have a Ph.D. in performance studies, but I've been involved in radio, television, film, stage work since the 60s. But right now, my work, by the way, has been as a performer, but I think after I became a Christian in the 60s at the University of Oregon as a vocal performance major, the Lord seemed to show me that he had given me the gift of encouragement and teaching, which I've used all of my life, and now today use primarily to encourage, support the top, I'd say, leading producers, actors, directors in redemptive and family movies that present a Christian biblical worldview. So what I've been doing recently is what I've been doing really all my life, but just at a little different level with different people now.
When we talk about faith-based films, and I love what you said when I was talking to you before in another conversation, is that you like to call it redemptive films.
I do. I think it's a broader term. I think, unfortunately, too, the faith-based films have come to have a connotation of not being top quality. Maybe that's the most gracious way to put it. However, they have grown significantly in content and in artistry. I've been involved with the faith-based films since the Passion of the Christ, since the very beginning, and have been amazed that they're continuing to improve and proliferate now. It's amazing what's happening now. So I'd love to tell you more about that.
Yeah, and it used to be that films weren't made unless you were making films with the big guys, and now independent films has just really taken off, hasn't it?
That's exactly what's happened. It's amazing. There, as you know, during the pandemic, especially, there have been huge paradigms shifts. Our world, in many ways, has been turned upside down, both personally, corporately, and nationally and internationally, in every way. But I really see a lot of good coming out of these paradigm shifts. And even though I've had the privilege of being involved with many family and redemptive movies out of Hollywood, out of the Hollywood studios, the Hollywood studios have really been struggling this last year and still are. In the meantime, the faith-based films are continuing. There are more and more independent studios that are emerging, doing finer and finer work. Every succeeding one that I've seen is better than the ones that have preceded them. So it's just an amazing time right now for independent redemptive films.
Yeah, it used to be that if you wanted to be in the film industry, you had to go to California, you had to go to Hollywood. And I hear about so many actors and actresses, screenplay writers, filmmakers have said, right in Indiana or right in Texas or right in Colorado, God used them in such a great film, and they were reaching around the world, and he's using people right where they're at. That's what's exciting.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I absolutely couldn't agree more. I could list a whole number of examples of just exactly what you've described. And I think the most important thing really is just being available to the Lord and being available where you are. And he will use you. It's amazing. And he will connect you with other people with other communication gifts in film or in other ways. And it's just amazing what he's doing with Christian communicators, media makers, filmmakers right now.
You know,
Amazing.
and I think with that Christian attitude, the Christ-like spirit that takes place when you're on a set, where you're in it for the message, that I'll do anything, not just what I'm scheduled to do. And that
That's correct.
I find that a lot of folks said, I didn't plan on doing that, but I ended up realize I started doing producing and directing and other things because there was a need. And I said, God, I'm just available for you.
Yes, I totally agree. And I think also, if you have the privilege of being in a film program to prepare you, it's good to learn a number of skills. I had the privilege of teaching, producing, directing our independent films at the University of Mary Hardin Baylor, where I taught. I was a performance studies professor there for 25 years, and I taught all aspects of film. But I encouraged our students to learn skills on both sides of the camera, because God does use you in places that you don't expect. So if you're a little more prepared, it's good too. So now it's amazing. Even in my own life, I've just been involved with just about every conceivable aspect of filmmaking, and still am.
Yeah, I've talked to some folks that said I would I would hold a boom mic just to be in the
Yes.
presence of what God has right here.
Yes,
And although they're
absolutely.
talented and could do other things, and that willingness just to be, and I've often said, God doesn't want your ability as much as he wants your availability.
Oh, I
And
couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. And of course, one of the wonderful things about working on any kind of a Christian project, um, where you have a team of Christian people, and especially Christian leadership, is when you can start with prayer, and together as a team, you're seeking what God has for you as a team, as a crew, as a cast and crew. And so you're working on this together, you're all in it together. And it's a thrilling thing to experience.
I've often said that, that there's a correlation with the collaboration of a film to other ministries and other things. That collaboration needs to take place in churches. It's not the
Oh,
people.
absolutely.
It's not the people that's up the front, or the worship team, or the preacher, or the speaker. It's the guy who cleans the toilets, and it's the guy who
Oh,
greets
absolutely.
people and takes the offering, is just as important in God's kingdom.
Right, we're all on the same team. Exactly. I totally agree. Absolutely, totally agree. I think too that I think that there's even more of a need now after the pandemic for us to get back together face to face in our churches to experience that in the flesh.
Yeah.
uh, Zoom is fine, and it's gotten us through this year, but there is a place for face to face, all hands on deck
Yeah.
in the flesh, working together.
There is a need for us to, God wanted a sense of community. He's called,
Yes,
even the early church was meeting in homes, and even the early
yes,
church, there was a group that was together, and there's a need for community. I also think God shook up the church too, to
I
say
do
that
too.
we need to reach outside our four walls, and media is
I do too.
where to do that too, and streaming
Oh,
and
I totally agree.
yeah.
Oh, the Lord's been trying to get our attention about all kinds of things. And I think that in general, he, my perspective is that this last year, he has been purifying, getting our attention, moving us in new directions, shaking up, our normal ways of doing things. It's 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 been very healthy in many, many ways.
Yeah.
I I think, and even nationally, I think he's cleansing, purifying, so that he can actually bring down what I call towers of Babel and raise up godly teams and structures and organizations.
I know this last year and a half, there's been a change in my life. Although I've been saved 57 years, there's this last year and a half, I've asked God, give me that passion for souls, that passion for ministry that I had when I was 18, 19 years old.
Right, right,
And he's rebirthed that in me. And
right.
if you ask him for that passion, he'll give it to you, and
Oh, absolutely.
he'll show you how you could use that. He just needs your heart to be tuned into him.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Well, it has been an absolute pleasure to get your perspective. You didn't just write a book on movies; you wrote several books on movies.
I did.
Publisher, author, and I just it would take the whole show just to tell all your accomplishments. I got to tell you, folks, that this
Well,
is just, we're just so blessed to have Dr. Howard on today.
thank you. I think basically, just speaking of all my work, the Lord has always led me to be on the front lines. Always. I've always been a pioneer. So the books I've written were simply because they were desperately needed in the times in which we were living. One of the books was on distance communication, and that was just in the very beginning when video conferencing was just emerging. And I saw that there were all kinds of skills that were needed to be taught in that with that new technology. So I wrote that book. And another one I wrote was on voice and diction dialects, because Americans are terribly lazy speakers. We have just a great deal to learn from others, such as the Brits, about good storytelling, about good diction, good use of dialects. And so I I wrote that book and taught that. And so the books that I wrote were all because I felt that they were needed in a fresh time in which we were living.
I'd like to encourage folks to look, and I'll give you some help by putting some things down below. But look up some of what Diane has done, and maybe some of you need to find some of those publications. Maybe that's just exactly what you need for your ministry and for what God's calling you. That could polish your trade and polish what you need to be doing for God. More important than that, God is still.
Andy, may I interrupt?
Please
I just
do.
want to, before I forget, one little book I wrote was just for our church, just helping our readers that just read the scriptures in the morning, especially now on streaming on Sundays, to read well. It's amazing. I love to just listen to the Psalms being read by David Suchet, who's Brit. He played Poirot and all the mysteries, but his his delivery is exceptional. It is so much better than most Americans. But I wrote a little guide that's available on Amazon about good delivery of the scriptures and how to deliver
Wow.
the various genres of scriptures well. But all of the resources that I put together are on my website, which is just dianehoward.com. There are a lot of tips for delivery and of dialogue and dialects on my website. So that whole website's been developed as a source of encouragement and resources for communicators, Christian communicators.
All right. Well, when they look down below, we'll make sure all that they have all those resources down below for you on my Facebook page. And I want people to be praying for Dr. Howard, that God would
Thank you.
continue. God, the best is yet to come in our life. God said the latter is going to be better than the earlier, and we're believing that, and we're believing that you.
Do I have time just to tell you one more thing that
Please do.
everybody should know about?
Please do.
Talk about cutting edge. And I will try to make this as brief as possible, but this is something everyone should take advantage of. Recently, there's been a new phenomenon called Faith Content Network. It's just faithcontentnetwork.com. And those are the best brand new first run redemptive movies that are available to churches at no cost for hosting or licensing. It's a whole new phenomenon, and it came out of Fathom events. Fathom events were held in theaters. There were special events that looked good on the screen, but were not typically dramas. Could have been sporting events or operas or Shakespeare or something like that. And there were a number of, especially documentaries, faith documentaries, that became a part of Fathom events. Then Fathom events developed its own division, Faith division. And then those movies started to allow them to be available to churches at no cost.
Oh my.
And so we've been showing them for the last year. They're the best movies I've ever seen. And every church can apply to show these films. It's just the easiest thing I've ever seen in my life. So I just encourage Christians to take advantage of these movies and use them. I think all of them are really family friendly. So I think they're really for all ages, of grade school through adults.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that tip, and we'll see what we can do to make sure that those are easy to contact on down below as well. Thank you for joining me today, and thank all of you for joining me for Morning Moments. And pass this message on. Look at my YouTube channel. Keep looking at other places where these are at, and keep spreading the good news that Jesus. Thank you so much, Dr. Howard.
Thank you, Andy.